Welcome in. Saturday night means it's time for DFS Chalk Talk, brought to you by Triple Play Fantasy. We get it going right after this. Glad to be here. So as always, it's time to get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. I'm your host, Jeff Mesha, and I always do it with my two buddies, Mike and Joe. Now, Mike's coming from Nebraska. He just moved from Florida to Nebraska, which is, I mean, it's a sensible move when you think about it. You know, Nebraska has the what? No, it doesn't have the. It's got the corn. Nebraska over Florida, I guess. Mike, that you explain. I don't know.
I believe I sent you some pictures earlier about what I like about Nebraska, or one of the many things I like about Nebraska. But the fishing up here is exquisite. The hunting's pretty amazing. And honestly, it's just bigger cities are just a little bit too fast. You know what I mean? And especially the area we were in, man, it was just getting too crowded. It was a great place until COVID hit. Once that happened, man, it just got too much. And it was a guy just realizes how much time he spends in traffic and stuff like that and starts figuring, what's really worth it at the end of the day. And so I came this way because I know it's a little bit more of a simple life. It's a little bit more fun over here as far as I'm concerned. And I can't wait to show my kids and my lady exactly what kind of stuff I'm talking about here. So,
hey, I'm sure it's great, man. I'm just busting chops, which leads me to the exact opposite of an outdoorsy person. Joe, what's going on?
I got DVR. I got cable, Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, Peacock, Paramount, every other one. My idea of camping is a 4-star hotel. But that being said, in our place of we like going out is what, the Strand in Providence, Jeff? What's the name of that place?
Yeah, let's not get into that one. So on this show. We like to do
real quick, because I like to take a real quick look back before we get started, refresh my memory on last week. And you're in the thick of it, of your NFL season, when you're looking back at last week's main slate and Dobbs, Amon-Ra obviously, but Dobbs, Tyler Boyd, and Noah Brown, 3 of my top scorers over 20, and 3 of the most key fantasy players of the week last year. 3 guys who certainly were not drafted. Maybe Boyd was in like the last round, but not the other 2.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you listened to us last week, you would have had Brown, you would have had Amon-Ra, you would have had Jaylen Warren, you would have had a lot of different guys in your lineup. So, and like I was saying, we do all things DFS. We'll give you full lineups of what we're going with, or one of our lineups for tomorrow for the main slate. We always do either our pay-ups, who we're kind of paying the most for, and then we got a couple from the bargain basement. So, Joe, I'll start with who you paying up for this week.
Yeah, so you really can't, and we said it about AJ Brown a couple of weeks ago. You really can't. It's the same story now. Amon-Ra St. Brown for Detroit. I mean, he put up 33 last week, and his last 4 weeks have been 33, 26, 20 pretty much, and 33. And obviously now another phenomenal matchup as they're home against Detroit. So I'm paying up for him, 8,800. And to be honest, he's cheaper than CeeDee Lamb. He's cheaper than Tyreek Hill, and he's cheaper than Diggs on DraftKings. So it's really, it's not the worst of it at wide receiver price wise.
No, man, I don't mind that. The guy's been on fire. Certainly, I've enjoyed him on our regular league in my lineup. So, and on the other side here, Mike, pay up. Who you got, brother?
Guys that I was curious about paying up for this week were CJ Stroud. He's coming in at 8,000. This guy's been pretty phenomenal all season long, and I don't think that this is going to be any different tonight, this week, because it's a matchup against Arizona at home. I think he ought to be able to go lights out against them. Another guy I had to pay up for was Austin Eckler at 8,800 at Green Bay. I think the Chargers, I don't think the Chargers win that game, but I think the Chargers are going to at least put up quite a few points, but I think Green Bay will edge them out. So,
right on, man. And I was looking at some stats earlier And CJ Stroud is second in passing yards. I'll get to who's number one in a little bit here when we talk about bargains. But as far as who I'm paying up for, I got our buddy, we call him Mustard, Raheem Mostert at home versus the Raiders. The guy's got 11 rushing touchdowns, which leads the league. And with Miami being home, I think this is where the parade or all the fandom for Antonio Pierce and the momentum that they had behind him for those last two wins, I think that kind of goes away. And I think Mostert must punches it in for 1 or 2 touchdowns, and we'll see how many yards. And I believe, and we usually do the injury report tomorrow morning on the Blitz, and you can catch us then at 11 a.m. Eastern. But you guys know, Joe, do you know the status of A-Chain or A-Chain, however you pronounce his name?
Yeah, I was just looking right now. He was activated off of IR today, but he seems to be very questionable. It feels like, and this is completely speculation, feels like he's going to be active tomorrow. He's going to get a few touches. I don't think it's going to be a 50-50 split. I think they're going to ease him back in. So I think Mostert's pretty safe this week.
Yeah, and even when it was, it's seemingly they both were hitting the end zone pretty good. So
especially on a nice matchup like this.
No doubt. So that leads us into bargains. And since I kind of hinted at one of mine, I'll just go ahead and kick that off. I've got Sam Howell at home versus Joey's New York Giants, abysmal New York Giants. Sam Howell's 7,700. Now, that's not necessarily the biggest bargain, but it's lower on the quarterback list as far as FanDuel is concerned. And this is a stat. I've mentioned CJ Stroud is number 2 in passing yards. Sam Howell leads the league in passing yards with 2,783. And that one, I was just looking at that earlier. That kind of surprised me a little bit. And he has 17 touchdowns, which are as many as Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if you guys knew that, but this guy's been burning it up. He was actually Mike's guy week 1, and I should have listened then. My apologies, Mike. I should have listened then, bro.
Yeah, nope. Guy gets lucky every now and again. Definitely on this factor, I'll take the win though.
Right.
I was glad to have him involved in a lot of my lineups last week.
Yeah. So the guy's been putting up some numbers. There's no question. So with a lot of guys above him on FanDuel, 7,700 to me is a bargain for a quarterback with those kind of stats. My other bargain, I'm looking at Romeo Doubs, number 1 option in Green Bay. Green Bay's offense not exactly burning it up, but who's not burning it up is the Chargers defense, and that's kind of more why I picked Romeo Doubs. So he is, my apologies there, 6,300 at home versus the Chargers. So the Chargers have allowed over 475 yards in 4 games this year. So I don't think that on paper their defense looks good. I said it last week. They just seemingly can't stop anybody. So I like Doubs as their number 1 option. Joe, did you have a comment about that, or you look like you had to say something to say? No? Okay. Well, I'll go to you for bargain wise then.
All right. My focus was Jerome Ford's 5,200 on DraftKings, and he's another guy where at some point he can't really be a pay down anymore because we're just going to have to understand that he's become a pretty consistent running back in the league this year. He's gone double digits 4 out of the last 5 weeks. Even at Baltimore last week, he cracked them for 17 carries, 107 yards. Loved the matchup for Cleveland, home against Pittsburgh. Obviously, Deshaun Watson out for the year now. They've got quarterback issues. They're going to have to lean on that run game. Jerome Ford's done well, even against the 49ers. He went for 1784. So he's proven that he can run hard against the good teams. And then real quick, I will I'll focus on that same game both of you guys have talked about a little bit in that Packer-Charger game. And I kind of I'm going to take the other side of this one. I think the Packers might score some points, but I don't think the Packers, unless there's a real weather impact in that game, I don't think Jordan Love can keep up with Justin Herbert and Eckler and Keenan Allen in that offense. So, at the bottom of that, Chargers have a little bit of depth issues right now at wide receiver. Mike Williams is out. Palmer and Guyton are both questionable. Rookie Quentin Johnson scored his first touchdown of the year last week, went for 4 4 for 34 and a touchdown. Was his best week. He's only 4,200 sporting there as the number 2 wideout. So I went with him. And then real quick, just staying on that game, we go back to the tight end situation there. Gerald Everett's out, so Donald Parham will get those red zone tight end looks all to himself this week, and he's only 3,100 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I did see your pick on that one. Actually, that makes some sense. And when I do another lineup, I might take another look at Parham. But so you brought up Cleveland, by the way, and my apologies, Mike. I'll get to your bargains here in a second. But what I pause a little bit on Ford because Kareem Hunt, I believe, has a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. So where you have Ford getting most of the yards, they're passing it off to Kareem Hunt kind of where it counts. And then they're not going with P.J. Walker at quarterback. I'm forgetting the guy's name. I can't even pronounce it.
I don't understand that QB move, but yeah. Actually,
so
Hunt's got a touchdown 5 games in a row.
Well, there you go.
Wow.
That's what gives me a little pause on Ford, adding to the quarterback situation, but I don't hate it. So bargain wise, Mike, who are you going with?
My bargains for this week, Trey McBride's still coming in $5,900. That's got to be, this guy's been lighting it up. He's been getting a lot of targets. I know a couple weeks ago against Cleveland, he didn't do very well, but nobody really does very well against Cleveland. But last week against Atlanta, who's got a pretty solid defense, he still put up 9 targets, 8 receptions, 131 yards, didn't get in the end zone, but still pretty damn good game. Another guy that's kind of been lighting it up under the radar is Latavius Murray, and he's up at 5,600. Latavius Murray's been kind of stealing a lot of touches out of James Cook's hands, and especially if James Cook has another fumble issue or anything like that, he may be seeing some bench. But either way, Latavius Murray's getting a lot of touches, enough looks in the game. Like last week, he had 9 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown, and that's even with James Cook doing fairly well in the same game. So I expect that Buffalo's going to have to rely quite a bit on that offense, on that running game, to try to beat the Jets defense this weekend. They're going to have to at least throw a lot of looks at him. And so I think in the red zone, I think we're going to be able to count on Latavius Murray to get in there.
Okay. Yeah, I can't disagree on that one either. And I actually really like the McBride pick because I have him in another one of my lineups that I'm doing here because it seemingly he has some, I know it's only one game, but with Kyler Murray, you can kind of lean on him in a little bit that adds some juice to the Arizona offense.
He's been good with 3 quarterbacks. It hasn't mattered. He seems just like a pretty solid, legit tight end.
And I feel bad making fun of him, calling him Trey Princess McBride last week. So, Trey, if you're watching, you're probably not. But in case, sorry about that, brother. But in any case, I'll tell you what, Mike, I'll keep it with you, man. Who you got full lineup coming into this week on the main slate?
Main slate this week, man. So I'm really excited. So my pay up, CJ Stroud, I already told you about him, and then Austin Eckler coming in. Latavius Murray coming up next. But Deebo Samuel, man. Deebo Samuel at home against Tampa Bay. When that guy's on the field, that's a completely different offense. We saw it last week with Deebo. I expect no difference against that defense. Brandon Cooks, we talked about him. No, actually, I didn't talk about him. He's another bargain that I've got. Brandon Cooks has been lighting it up, and he's playing Carolina defense that I think that Dak shouldn't have too many problems with. Although they're pretty good, I think that they'll be able to still get the ball to CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks enough to make it a value play. Nico Collins to add to that stack with my CJ Stroud, because I think Nico Collins is going to have himself a day against that defense. Trey McBride on the opposite side of the field because Houston has a weak tight end defense, and I think they're going to have to pass the ball to try to keep up with them. Then Brian Robinson Jr. Brian Robinson Jr. lit it up last week. I know it was a big score on that one, but I think we'll be able to see it again against those Giants. I think it's going to be a game where they're going to be able to get ahead of those Giants again, be able to push them around. And then I've got, for my defense, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers at Cleveland. Cleveland is not going to be the same team without Deshaun Watson. Then we'll have to see. Like I said, I just don't think that P.J. Walker is going to be the guy that comes out there and is able to do too much against this solid defense. So
he's not playing.
It's the line.
P.J. Walker's not starting. It's the rookie, Dorian, whatever.
He has 2 last names. He has 3 interceptions in his last game, to his credit. So solid play by Cleveland. I don't know exactly where they're going with that. So that makes the Steelers defense look even better. And since we're talking about that, they are also in my lineup at 4,000. To me, that's actually, and I used the pay up last week on the Cowboys. They kind of let off the gas a little bit and let the Giants get 17 points on them, which kind of dwindled the points that they had a little bit, but still put up 5 sacks. In any case, I digress on that. So I got the Steelers also in my defense. Quarterback-wise, I mentioned them, Sam Howell at home versus the Giants, the lowly Giants. I won't pick on them so Joe doesn't start crying. Running back-wise, Raheem Mostert at home versus the Raiders, 7,800. I think he's going to have a day. And by the way, Joe, and let me backtrack for a second on that. I make fun of the Giants, but me being a Patriots fan, I really shouldn't be talking right now because they might even be worse.
Next week, we got the Loser Bowl. Patriots-Giants next week.
Oh, God. I don't even know if I'll watch that game. So, and I continue. Other running back, I got Aaron Jones at home versus the Chargers. He's 7,000. Usually as we're doing lineups, I don't revise in the middle of my lineup. But as we're talking through all of this, there's 2 players I'm going to revise. I'll read through what I have, and then we can kind of discuss from there. So I also got Nico Collins. So I believe Joe had him too, so I'll let Joe give his lineup. But 7,200 at Arizona. Stroud's main guy. I think he's going to have a pretty good day.
Take it away. I didn't have him.
Well, scratch that. I'll stop talking. Other wide receiver, Terry McLaurin at home versus the Giants, 6,800. I think that's a bargain a little bit in and of itself as the number 1 target for Sam Howell. That's a bit of a stack for me on that one. We'll see how they do against the Giants. So, and then wide receiver, I got Dobbs, but at my flex, I also had Aaron Jones. I don't want to do 2 guys from the Packers. I think that is going to kill me. So I'm gonna scratch Dobbs and figure out somebody else between him and flex wise. I got Saquon Barkley at Washington, 7,600. I'm probably going to scratch him and put somebody else in there too and see what I can get for those. So what would that be? 13-9 on FanDuel. So anyways, so we'll skip that. Tight end, I got Cole Kmet at Detroit, 5,600. With Justin Fields back, that's kind of like his safety blanket. We use that term a lot, but it's kind of his go-to guy. I know that DJ Moore is there, but Fields has had Kmet, with him for a couple of years. They got a little bit of chemistry, so I got high hopes on that one. And I already mentioned the Steelers defense at Cleveland, 4,000 against the guy with 3 names. Lineup-wise, Joe, who you got?
Yeah. I remember last week thinking there weren't a real lot of good quarterback plays, and I dipped down low and went Dobbs in one league in one site, and I forgot who I went in the other. But this week I feel like it's the opposite. There's a lot of really good choices, in my opinion, from Tua to Dak to Stroud to Goff. Got a great matchup. Fields, you can't deny Howell and those yards. Kyler Murray looked halfway decent in his first game back. I'm going Dak Prescott on DraftKings, 7,300 at Carolina, a game they should obviously win. The guy's got 32, 31, and 41 in his last 3 DraftKings games on DraftKings. And, the thing that I like about it from a fantasy perspective is it was the Giants last week. That game was never in question. It was the Rams 2 weeks ago. That game was never in question. And it still was not Tony Pollard rushing the ball for 25 yards and 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was still Dak throwing, even with a big lead. So I'm very encouraged by that. I'm going to take advantage of that matchup for sure and ride the Cowboys while they're hot. Jamar Gibbs, 7,000, Chicago at Detroit. He's playing like a number 1 back, whether Montgomery is playing or not at this point. His last 3 DraftKings games are 26, 32, and 27. I wouldn't do it on DFS, but if in a league, if you have both Montgomery and Gibbs home against Chicago, I would be shocked if they both don't give you 20 apiece or close. I expect that tomorrow home against Chicago. So I love that. You get number 1 running back production for only $7,000. Jeff, Mike, I'm with you. Brian Robinson against the Giants. First of all, he's been really good. He's been finding the end zone consistently for them. The Giants are just an absolute disaster, so no reason to think why Robinson shouldn't see the end zone again after going for 30 points last week against Seattle. We moved the wide out. We talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8,800. I mean, he's been playing like a number one, but he's a little cheaper than those other guys home against Chicago. Brandon Cooks, somebody did finally mention him. You know, again, the Cowboys are going to score a lot of points. We know CeeDee Lamb's going to get his, but it's finally nice to see Cook's getting his. He's getting some red zone targets. I expect him to have a decent game at Carolina. It's a great matchup. And then the rookie Quentin Johnson, 4,200 for the Chargers at Green Bay. He slid into that number 2 wideout position with all the injuries that the Chargers have. And he's got double digits in his last 2 out of his last 3 games and finally got in the end zone last week for the Chargers. Sticking with the Chargers at Green Bay, as long as there's no weather, I do believe the Chargers can score in that game. Donald Parham, I added a letter almost there. There's no end. Donald Parham Jr., 3,100 for the Chargers. You know, it's been this game with him and Everett all year long. One has a good game, one doesn't. No Everett to get in the way. So you like Parham, you know, it's probably like 3 for 20 and a touchdown, but as long as he gets that touchdown, that works. 5,200, Jerome Ford in the flex position for Cleveland. No matter the quarterback, no matter who they're playing, this guy runs for good yardage. Definitely been losing the touchdowns to Hunt, but I got a feeling he gets in the end zone tomorrow home against Pittsburgh. They obviously don't want to throw a lot. And then defense, I got to say, I had the Cleveland defense in, which I have no problem playing. I mean, they went for 15 points at Baltimore last week, 23 points against Arizona the week previously, 16 a few weeks before that against Indy. I think they're going to eat up the Pittsburgh offense. However, I have enough money to play almost any of the other ones, but I could play Detroit and I could play Washington. And it's just, again, like, I don't want to pick on Mr. Danny DeVito. Twins is one of my favorite movies ever. We know this, Jeff. However, it's hard. You know, Pittsburgh could score on Cleveland. Can the Giants score on the Commanders? I'm not sure they can. So I'm still playing with that defensive spot going between the Browns and the Commanders. I might wait to see what the weather is like too. There seems to be a lot of rain and some cold weather coming up in the East this week. So I might take a look to see if that might make a difference in the morning.
Which reminds me, you mentioned Twins and Tommy DeVito. So Tommy DeVito, we mentioned it last week, lives with his parents, and if you didn't know this, they have a second home 300 nautical miles southwest of Fiji. And if you don't get that Twins reference, then shame on you. So, and you brought up the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb. Last 4 games, CeeDee Lamb receiving yards, 117, 158, 191, 151. The guy has been murdering it.
Yeah. And, you know, let me preface that. Like, I'm playing Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he's 8,800 on DraftKings, and you save a few $100 versus the other top guys. And, like, I got CeeDee Lamb in some leagues and stuff. If I had, you know, if all I did, and it's hard to think this way, but, like, you really got to think about it. Like, if all I did was this one DFS lineup, I probably do have CeeDee Lamb paired with Dax as my wideout to have both of them together and get those points when he goes off tomorrow. But, you know, obviously everybody's got so many different leagues and lineups but I would have no issue with somebody playing CeeDee Lamb. It's just like the AJ Brown thing. You got to ride these guys when they're so hot.
And on DraftKings, what's the difference between the two? Do you have that on hand? Because I'm looking at FanDuel and it's 300. So is the difference. So St. Brown's 8,900. CeeDee Lamb is 92.
So yeah, that's interesting because so Tyreek Hill's 93, CeeDee Lamb's 92 on DraftKings too. Diggs is 91. Get this, Keenan Allen's 9,000, and then St. Brown's 8,800. So he's 5th on the list, you know, performing just as well as all those guys right now. I guess maybe other than Lamb.
That is, and Tyreek Hill on FanDuel. 9,800. That's a large salary to swallow. Not that he's not going to get yardage and touchdowns, most likely. So, before we get out of here, any parting words there, gentlemen?
Go Big Red. I think I get to say that now officially. And the N stands for knowledge.
I'll tell you what, Joe, don't say anything. You cannot top that. So, don't forget tomorrow. 11 a.m. Eastern. Catch the 3 of us on the Blitz. We'll be answering questions live. We look forward to everybody and everything. And you know, we stay on as long as the questions keep coming in. So it'll be good to hear everybody if you guys can join us then. So, and until next time, as always, we've got you covered.